Hey there, survivor. If you can hear this, it means you're still alive. This is Jack's Nightmares, a place for stories that unfold in real time. No shortcuts, no fantasy rules, just people making hard decisions when everything starts to fall apart. If you want more stories like this, subscribe. If you've got ideas, leave them in the comments. And if you just want to support the channel, being here is enough. Now, let's begin. This is your next story. The satellite signal vanished while I was eating breakfast. I just poured water over coarse grounds, set the kettle on the propane burner, and turned the radio to channel 9 for the morning check-in. Even though no one ever replied that early. The television flickered, showed half a weather loop, then just quit. Screen went black. I figured it was a local dish issue or a relay dropout on the provider's end. That happens sometimes out here. Weather can block it, solar flares mess with signal, or an uplink just fails. But the red status light on the modem kept blinking even after a full power cycle, and nothing ever came back. At first, I didn't panic. I live off the main grid on purpose. I've gone weeks without connection before, and most times it's just a reset, a fuse, or an equipment fault that clears up. I've always liked having the option to check in, pull weather maps, read news feeds, or watch a game. But I don't rely on it for survival. My food storage is solid. My tools are manual. I have water from a gravity-fed tank I built 3 summers ago, and the solar rig's been stable since I mounted the final panel last fall. So when the screen died and the modem stayed offline, I made coffee, ate my toast, and got on with my day. Just another glitch, I told myself. That was 10 days ago. The signal hasn't returned. Nothing has. I live deep in the woods, east of a logging access road that nobody bothers with unless they're forestry crew or snowmobile patrol. Closest town is Clearwater, about 35 miles west as the crow flies. That's a long haul without fuel, and even worse in winter. This land was granted under a remote use exemption tied to an old Crown land lease, which most people have forgotten even exists. My first cabin here was built cheap, pallet wood, salvaged boards, rebar ladder frames, the works. I used it for seasonal downtime, mostly when trail repair or rope rigging jobs paused during fire bans. But after I turned 50 and my knees started giving out more often, I wanted something better, so I began building the new place 2 years ago. Larger footprint, tighter insulation, more space to move. Real 4-season shelter, not some off-grid shack with tarp windows. I've always worked with my hands. 27 years on crews across the interior, running ladder systems, inspecting cable winches, setting anchor posts in places where one bad call meant a snapped neck. I built for safety, lived for the structure. I never had a wife or kids. My job was my life. I climbed until my hands bled in summer and froze in winter, and I'd do it again. I didn't need a family. I needed a reason to keep everything bolted down and level. Before this, I still made town runs every 3 to 4 weeks. Gas, hardware, animal feed, mail, sometimes groceries. There was a warehouse about 6 miles southeast that stored old forestry gear, and I had access to it thanks to the previous foreman, who knew I kept building on my own. It wasn't fenced or guarded anymore, just padlocked. I hauled what I needed using the quad and hitched trailer. Last time I went was around 5 weeks back. Loaded pressure-treated boards, spare aluminum cross braces, 3 sheets of polycarbonate, and a partial crate of fasteners. I was getting ready to finish the outer framing before snow locked everything down. Then the world shut off. Quiet, fast, with no warning. No planes, no helicopters, no low-flying forestry drones. For the first few days, I thought maybe there was a temporary communication blackout, maybe a bad atmospheric event. But I haven't seen contrails since that morning. No distant chainsaws, no trail bikes. The forest is too still, and it's wrong. The first time I spotted one of the infected, it was about 100 feet downslope from the goat enclosure, just near the tree line. I was standing on the upper frame of the new structure, fitting a corner beam into place. I noticed movement and froze. It was slow, hunched, dragging a leg. Human shape, but the way it moved wasn't right. Too stiff, too off balance. It didn't look at anything. just passed through the trees with no direction. I watched it until it disappeared into the underbrush near the stream. I didn't need the internet to know what it was. Anyone who's watched the news in the last 5 years knows what outbreaks look like. Not the movies, the real ones. Wet markets going dark. Bodies in airport terminals. Masked officers burning farmsteads. Rumors always said we were overdue for something worse. Something that wouldn't just hit the cities. I guess they were right. I've seen more since. Some stagger, some crawl. One of them ran straight across the clearing 2 nights ago and vanished into the gully without stopping. I didn't shoot it. I didn't move at all. I just stood there behind the doorway with the rifle aimed, wondering if I was visible in the moonlight. I couldn't sleep after that. I keep my goats inside the old cabin now. I've got 2 of them, had them for trimming the slope and fertilizing the garden beds. They're not loud, but they do get jumpy when anything moves outside. I rigged a perimeter fence out of extra aluminum ladder sections and cable remnants from old job sites. Makeshift, but functional. I know how to build fast under pressure. It won't hold forever, but it might give me enough time to get upstairs and aim. The new cabin wasn't ready when all this started. Just framing, a partial floor, and stacked materials under tarp. But it's further from the access trail and easier to defend. Over the past week, I've been pushing non-stop to finish enough of it to move in before real winter hits. I cut wall panels from scrap boards, mounted the polycarbonate for the greenhouse roof, and sealed joints with foam tape and leftover caulk. I'm sleeping in the old place, but not for long. It creaks too much in the wind, and the smell of animal feed draws too much attention. I need a better shelter before snowfall. The power setup still works. My panels are mounted on a southern slope that gets full sun most of the day. I rewired the controller last week so I could shift stored power between the cabin and greenhouse without overheating the charge converter. The backup generator runs, but it's loud and draws fuel I can't afford to waste. I only use it if battery voltage drops below critical. Water's gravity-fed. 55-gallon barrel filled by runoff and topped off with a spring pipe. I run it through a ceramic filter before drinking. Food isn't unlimited. I have staples, rice, beans, lentils. I vacuum-sealed dried produce from last season and froze some goat milk in hard containers. Most canned meat is gone. I've got salt, flour, powdered eggs, and dried potatoes. I've made worse meals, but I'm rationing now. No reason to pretend help is coming. If anyone's still running logistics, they're not coming out here. Not unless they're desperate. And I don't want company. Not yet. I've tried radio. The antenna cracked last winter and I never bothered to fix it. My portable transceiver pulls nothing but static, even on international emergency bands. No ships, no airplanes, no marine traffic. I scan every evening anyway. I'll keep scanning until I die or hear a voice. I've started keeping notes to hold on to structure. Old habit from inspection days. If you don't write it, you forget it. If you forget it, it kills you. So this is record 1. My name is Colin Washburn. I'm 50 years old. I spent most of my life working with fall protection, ladder systems, and safety rigging across British Columbia. I have no family, no medical conditions, no exit plan. I live alone in a half-finished cabin above the Clearwater Basin. I have 2 goats, a quad bike, a .303 rifle I cleaned last night, and enough screws to finish my walls if the snow holds off. I've been checking the perimeter every morning with a pair of binoculars and a steel pry bar in my offhand. I don't take the rifle unless I hear something. I've only fired it once since this started. That was 3 days ago. The infected don't move at night unless they're already close or chasing something. I think it's body heat or noise that triggers them. They're not hunting like animals, but they don't wander aimlessly either. There's a pattern, or maybe it's just instinct. Either way, they don't make noise unless they're already moving. The one I saw up close came through the cedar break around noon. I'd been outside clearing frost off the upper window frames, using an old rubber scraper and a propane torch to dry the sills. The goats were penned near the storage crates, chewing on some of the moldy hay I should have burned. I didn't hear it approach. I just caught the movement between 2 branches. At first, just a smear of grey against bark. I lowered the torch and held my breath, It was crawling on all fours, one arm dragging behind, torn elbow, dirty flannel shirt soaked in dried something. Probably blood. Could have been its or someone else's. Its scalp was split. The skin flapped open near the crown, and the thing made wet mouth noises every few seconds. Not loud, not gurgling, just present. I stepped backward once, just one clean step into the shadows of the porch, and it froze. Its head didn't turn. It didn't sniff. Just stopped. Waited. Then it kept moving, but not toward me. Not straight. It veered, slow, and circled the property line until it lost sight of the clearing and vanished behind a snow-covered thicket. I kept still for 20 minutes. Rifle ready. The goats didn't even notice. That was the moment I realized my current perimeter wasn't going to be enough. If I'd been carrying lumber or talking aloud, if I'd dropped a tool or called out to the goats, that thing might have come straight in. The aluminum ladder fence I'd rigged would never hold. It wasn't even anchored, just tensioned together with cable ties and brute force. Good for a warning, useless for defense. I took it down the next day and started stacking logs instead. I don't have concrete or steel mesh. What I have is treated timber, rope, tension anchors, and some leftover footing plates from a job I quit 4 years ago. I buried vertical posts 2 feet down around the main slope and angled them out so the structure would lean slightly forward. That way, if something climbed or pushed, its own weight would work against it. Then I cut crossbars, stripped the bark to reduce rot, and lashed them tight. It's not permanent, but it'll hold for now. It gives me something real between me and what's wandering out there. I'll reinforce with stone later, if I live through the freeze. The nights have dropped below 15 degrees Fahrenheit. I keep heat limited to a single room, the one with the goats, my tools, and the backup batteries. I've got a small rocket stove I built 2 winters back from old stovepipe and concrete fill. It burns hot and clean, doesn't smoke if I feed it slow. I vent it through a triple-sealed elbow up through the roof. Chimney still leaks heat, but it's manageable. I dry socks on a nailed-up coat rack above the firebox and rotate layers on a set schedule. Everything smells like smoke and wet wool. I haven't slept more than 3 hours straight since the day I saw the crawler. My back locks up from the cold, my shoulders acting up again. Every creak pop from the wall joints makes me check the rifle. I've started keeping it on the bed with the bolt unlocked and a full mag in the well. I don't leave it chambered unless I hear something. Not yet. This morning, I walked the frozen slope east of the greenhouse. There are deer tracks in the snow, but no droppings. Either they're running scared or dying off faster than usual. I found a dead squirrel near the fuel cache, neck twisted, not eaten, just broken and left. Maybe it panicked and fell. Maybe something else chased it. I wrapped it in cloth and buried it away from the cabin. I don't want scavengers getting bold. I haven't seen crows or hawks in a while either. That's what really worries me. I've stopped assuming the infected are dumb. They're not smart either, but some of them remember paths. I saw the same one twice, 4 days apart, pass near the same cedar stump on the west edge of the hill. It didn't react to scent lures I set up. It didn't flinch when I triggered a wind chime I strung above it. But it looked up. Briefly. It didn't have expression, but it responded. Then it kept going. That thing had enough mind left to acknowledge a vertical sound source. That's more than some animals do. There's no road here. That's part of why I bought this land to begin with. The only access is by ATV or foot, unless you're coming in by air. I have an old topo map marked with every elevation change and water feature for 10 miles. I memorized it. It took me 2 years to scout every route in and out, and I've never shown anyone where the shortcuts are. If someone finds me now, it'll be dumb luck or desperation. I don't know if that would be worse than the infected. I set up new traps around the lower slope. Basic noise alerts and one deadfall meant to take out anything large and upright. It's not pretty. I used a tension line from the porch runner, an old car spring, and a repurposed tool locker filled with concrete chunks. If something cuts that line and doesn't stop moving, the locker drops. It won't kill, but it'll break enough to slow. I don't like relying on traps, but I need early warnings. I don't have cameras. Batteries are more valuable in tools than motion sensors. I check the lines every morning. Today, One of the goats kicked open a feed bin and made a racket. I thought it was an attack. I was outside within seconds with the rifle shouldered and ready to fire. Just a stupid goat trying to chew through an old plastic bag for salt. I screamed at it. Not to scare it, but because I'd wasted precious seconds believing something had breached the fence. My hands didn't stop shaking for an hour after. I almost shot my own animal. That's where I'm at now. I've been eating cold lentils with dry biscuits. I can cook, but I don't trust smoke right now. The rocket stove helps, but I've kept it burning only when the wind's right. No sense advertising I'm alive if something nearby is still curious. I warm water in metal tins near the stove and use that to heat old meal packs. It's not pleasant, but it works. I rotate between dried eggs, powdered milk, beans, and whatever root vegetables haven't spoiled yet. The potatoes are soft, but not moldy. I think I can plant the last few if I get the greenhouse walls insulated in time. I'll need to dig trenches and lay coiled tubing to circulate warmer air from the compost heap into the greenhouse floor. That'll buy me a few degrees at night. I haven't seen another person in almost 4 weeks. No tracks, no fires, no voices. If anyone else survived out here, he is either hiding better than I am, or he didn't last. Towns would have gone first. Too many people, too many doors, not enough bullets. Even if someone had a plan, it wouldn't work once supply lines stopped. Food doesn't just show up. Generators don't run without fuel. And nobody I know stocked enough antibiotics, let alone antifungal. The infection didn't need to win quickly, it just needed to be patient. I call them infected because that word still fits inside my head without forcing anything else to fit around it. I don't know what started this. I don't know if it's viral, bacterial, fungal, or something else entirely. I never saw the early stages up close. I never watched someone get sick and then turn. By the time I saw the first one moving through the trees, whatever process did this had already finished its work. Calling them dead feels wrong. They aren't corpses the way I understand corpses. They move. They react. Some of them heal slowly, in a way that doesn't make sense. Others fall apart faster than they should. Calling them monsters feels dishonest. Monsters imply intention. These things don't plan. They just respond. So infected is the only word I use. It leaves room for not knowing, and not knowing is safer than pretending. The days have settled into a rhythm now, and that rhythm keeps me alive. I wake before first light, usually from the cold rather than noise. I check the perimeter from the upper window first, scanning the slope, the tree line, the creek bed, and the access cut I made last year for hauling lumber. I don't move outside until I'm sure nothing has shifted overnight. Fresh tracks stand out in snow, and even in bare ground I can usually spot disturbed leaf litter or snapped twigs. Years of inspecting job sites train my eyes for small changes. That habit matters more now than it ever did when someone else was paying me. After the scan, I feed the goats. I keep them quiet on purpose. No shaking buckets, no calling. I move slow, keep my boots brushed clean of packed snow so I don't crunch more than necessary. They're starting to sense that noise equals danger. They don't bleat much anymore. They just watch me with their heads tilted, waiting. I check their hooves, their eyes, their coats. If one of them gets sick, I'll notice early, or I'll lose it. There's no replacement, no second chance. Hunting has become part of the routine, but I don't do it every day. Ammunition is limited, and noise travels far in cold air. I set snares instead. Old wire bent just right, staked low along animal runs I mapped years ago. Rabbits, sometimes squirrels. I caught a young deer once, but it broke free and left blood in the snow. I tracked it for half a mile before giving up. I don't chase wounded animals anymore. It burns energy and attention I can't spare. If something bleeds out nearby, I'll find it later. If not, it lives. That's the rule now. When I do take a shot, I plan it for midday, when sound blends into wind and thermal shifts. I move uphill, fire downward, and relocate immediately. I don't linger to admire the work. I clean the rifle every time afterward, even if it only fired once. Old habit. Dirt and moisture ruin more than neglect ever did. I skin and butcher fast, far from the cabin, and whole meat back in sealed wraps. Smoke draws attention, so most of it gets dried thin over low heat or buried in snow to freeze solid. I've lost weight already. That's expected. Anyone who doesn't loses later, when it matters. The real work, though, hasn't been food. It's been the wall. After seeing that crawler slip past my original fence without even noticing it, I stopped pretending temporary measures would be enough. A real perimeter takes time, and time is what winter steals. I laid it out in sections, measured angles, calculated sightlines from the cabin windows, and marked load-bearing points with spray paint scavenged from the warehouse. I didn't build it to keep everything out. I built it to slow, funnel, and expose. If something comes through the wall, I want it tired, tangled, and visible. I used logs first. Deadfall pine, cut to length, sunk into shallow trenches, and backfilled with packed earth and stone. Each post leans outward slightly, just enough that weight pushes back instead of down. Between the posts, I wove wire and scrap metal, old bed frames, ladder rungs, bent rebar. Nothing fancy. Everything sharp where it needs to be and blunt where it needs to hold. I left gaps on purpose. Narrow corridors lined with noise traps and trip lines. If something moves wrong, I'll hear it. If it tries to crawl, it'll get stuck. If it pushes upright, it'll fall forward into its own momentum. It took 11 days to finish the main perimeter, working in bursts between patrols and weather shifts. My hands split open twice, and I wrapped them with cloth soaked in alcohol I'd been saving for cleaning tools. It burned, but infection burns worse. I don't have the luxury of letting a cut fester. Every injury is a risk now, no matter how small. I move slower because of it, but slower is better than careless. Only after the wall started to take shape did I turn my focus back to the cabin. Before, I thought shelter was the priority. Now I know defense buys time, and time finishes shelters. I sealed the lower walls with foam and fiber insulation, layered tight, no gaps. I double-framed the north side and packed it heavy. Cold comes from that direction first. I reinforced the roof trusses with steel brackets and added a second pitch to shed snow. Every joint got checked twice. I don't trust first passes anymore. Inside, I moved everything essential into one central room. Bed, batteries, stove, water filter, medical kit. If I have to abandon the rest of the cabin in a hurry, I can barricade that room and survive. I installed an interior ladder system I built myself, allowing access to the loft without touching the floor directly. Habit again. Vertical movement is safer when you control the angles. The infected haven't tested the wall yet, not directly. I've seen them wander near it, bump into sections, lose interest, and drift away. One got tangled in wire overnight and thrashed until it tore its own shoulder apart. I watched it from the window until it stopped moving. I didn't finish it off. The noise would have drawn more. Instead, I waited until morning, approached from upwind, and put one round through the skull at close range, clean, fast. Then I dragged the body downhill and burned it in a shallow pit with scrap wood and diesel rags. The smell lingered for hours. I wore a mask and still tasted it afterward. I don't know if burning them helps. I don't know if leaving them helps either, but I won't let bodies pile up near my home. Rot attracts animals. Animals attract infected. Everything leads back to noise and movement. That's the rule I keep seeing repeat. The cabin is about 70% done now, enough to keep heat in and eyes out. The greenhouse still needs work, and that worries me. Winter doesn't care about plans. It just arrives. I can feel it in the way the ground holds cold longer each day, in how the sun barely clears the ridge before sliding away. I count daylight hours now. I mark them on the wall with charcoal. I don't miss days. Missing days is how people forget what they're racing against. I still haven't heard another human voice. Sometimes I think I do, just at the edge of wind noise. But when I stop and listen, it's nothing. Trees settling, ice cracking, my own breathing inside the hood. Loneliness isn't loud, it's just constant. It presses in during the quiet moments, especially when the work stops and there's nothing left to fix for a few hours. That's when I remind myself why I call them infected and not dead. Because as long as something moves out there, the world hasn't fully stopped. It's changed, bent, broken, but it's still active. And as long as it's active, there's work to do, walls to finish, food to find, another night to get through without making a mistake. I don't use words like zombies. That's movie stuff. None of these things have popped out of the dirt or clawed their way up from coffins. They're real people, warped, wrecked, infected with something I can't name but can observe. And that's enough. Their skin decays, their blood dries wrong, their muscles twitch like there's still orders coming from upstairs, even when the eyes don't track properly. I don't need a lab test to know that what's driving them isn't thought. It's process. Some automatic thing in the nervous system that won't quit. I've seen enough falls, electrocutions, and construction injuries to know what dead looks like. This isn't it. Yet. I gave up sleep again last night. Couldn't get warm, and the damn goats kept shifting around and chewing through the crate rope. I finally got up around 4:30, made a cup of hot water with dry ginger and half a cube of bouillon, and sat by the stove until the eastern tree line started to pale. I'd been putting off the warehouse trip for too long. I told myself I had enough here, but that was pride talking. The truth is, I've still got a key and access to real materials, sheeting, brackets, treated timber, and old food packs from the fire cache lockers. That warehouse was stocked for field crews that never came back. I don't know who else knows it's there. If I don't clear it out, someone else might. At 6:30 sharp, I loaded the quad. The trail was semi-frozen, no deep snow yet, but enough hard frost that traction was spotty. I brought the fuel can, a crowbar, the rifle in its mount, and both weather crates to strap on whatever I could carry. I also packed the aluminum saw, a wedge hammer, and a few salvage bags just in case. I left the goats penned inside, triple-locked the main entry, and set up the bear alarm on the porch rail just to be sure nothing wandered in while I was gone. The warehouse is 6 miles out, but the terrain makes it feel longer. Steep slopes, tight switchbacks, a broken culvert I had to winch around. I took it slow, checked every blind corner. I didn't want to get surprised by one of them in a ditch or under a pile of brush. Last thing I need is a fall or an engine stall out there alone. You don't get second chances once you're on foot and bleeding. The building was intact. No new boot prints in the frost near the roll-up, no broken glass. I keyed the side door and closed it fast behind me. Inside smelled stale but dry. No rot, no droppings. The pallets were still there. I opened 3 crates. One of them was full of galvanized L brackets, another had fiberglass panel strips, and one had shrink-wrapped cans of fire shelter food packs. I loaded everything I could fit. 2 crates went on the trailer. I filled the front rack with the smaller gear and hand-tied every strap 3 times. No time for a second trip. I left by the same path. Didn't see anything on the return, but I didn't relax either. Every 100 yards I cut the engine and listened. I swear I heard something once. A snap in the brush that didn't match the breeze. But nothing showed. Could have been an animal. Could have been a delayed echo. Doesn't matter. I didn't stop to check. I rolled back into my clearing just before 11 and unpacked everything before noon. I've never moved faster without dropping a screw. After I stored the gear, I grabbed the rifle again and packed a small rucksack for the walk to Marcus's place. That's what I used to call him. Marcus Langley. Lived part-time in a hut about an hour east, just on the far edge of a wide glacial slope that leads to the lake. His cabin wasn't proper, just a fishing retreat, pre-cut kit with a rough loft and a single burner stove. No real insulation, but he stayed there during summer and into early fall every year. We talked maybe 4 or 5 times in all, always short and cordial. He was younger than me, early 30s probably. Fast-talking, quick-moving, always chewing gum or fiddling with something. A city guy trying hard to play rural, but he was decent. I took the east trail, moving with the wind so I'd hear anything downwind first. There were no new tracks, but the snow cover wasn't deep enough to guarantee anything. I stuck to ridgelines and avoided flat rock where prints vanish. When I got close, I slowed to a crawl. His cabin was still locked up. No smoke, no noise. I waited 10 minutes, just listening. Then I circled wide, checked the outhouse, the woodpile, the secondary lean-to. All looked untouched. I knocked once, nothing. Knocked again, harder, still nothing. I picked the side window. It was loose from when he bent the track last spring, and got in that way. Inside, it was cold but dry. I could still smell the last cooking oil he used. He hadn't stayed long this time. The bedding was folded, food bin unopened, gear stacked neat. Nothing was scattered, and nothing was recent. No blood, no mess. Just absence. I stayed inside 20 minutes, gathering anything worth taking. I found a tackle box, 3 rods, a manual ice auger, and 2 pairs of rubber boots in my size. I also found a small crank radio and a near-full jug of lamp oil. Those went in the pack. I didn't take anything personal. I don't do that. But if Marcus never comes back, the gear will matter more here than gathering dust. On the way back, I cut west across a ravine I usually avoid. The ice was firm enough, and I wanted to check one more clearing where I sometimes saw wildlife. That's where I spotted it again. The same one, I think. Same torn elbow, same hunched posture. It wasn't moving, just crouched near the tree line. Back bent, head hanging low like it was asleep or frozen. I got within 50 feet, rifle aimed, not breathing. No reaction. Then it turned its head. No blink, no delay. Just a slow turn, mouth open, but no breath cloud in the cold. The way it moved, there was no effort in it, like the joints didn't mind. It shifted upright and started walking toward me. Not fast, not a charge, just direct. I took one step back and shouted. I don't know why. Reflex maybe. It didn't flinch. It didn't speed up either. Just kept coming. I aimed, fired once into the upper chest. It staggered, stopped, then kept moving. I aimed higher and hit the neck. That dropped it. It didn't get up again. I didn't go over to check. I backed off, stayed in cover, and made a full sweep before returning to the cabin by the north slope. I was home by sunset. That was yesterday. I haven't left the perimeter since. It took me the rest of that day to reset the traps and start stacking new wall posts. The warehouse materials gave me enough for a proper barrier, 6 feet high, triple-railed, with support braces angled back toward the cabin. I sunk new post holes and braced each with scrap rock and packed snow. I'd already measured the tension angles and spaced each section for maximum load bearing without overcutting my lumber. I set the top rail the next morning while the frost was still thick enough to hold my footing steady. By evening, the outer wall was sealed on all sides. 2 points of entry, one near the greenhouse, another at the quad path I used to get to the warehouse trail. Both reinforced, both rigged with alert lines. The next 2 weeks blurred. I worked through pain, through cracked knuckles, pulled shoulder tendons, bruised knees. It should have taken 3 months. Easy. But you don't think about pacing when the air smells wrong, and your gut tells you that whatever window of quiet you're in won't last. I've built ladder systems 40 feet high in -10 temperatures without gloves before. I know how to make my body obey. Fear helps more than coffee. I finished the cabin by the 8th night, fully enclosed, sealed, weather-ready. Not pretty, but strong. The new insulation held heat better than I expected. I sealed the seams with a mix of foam spray and salvage tape. Windows were triple-latched from the inside with slats that dropped down. Roofline pitched to keep snow sliding off naturally. The battery room stayed above freezing even when the outside hit 11 below Fahrenheit. I moved into the new structure that same night. Kept the goats in the side shed. I gave myself a full night of sleep. No alarms, no motion sensors, no watching the clock. Just slept. I made another trip to the warehouse once the sun came out strong again. Loaded the last of the crate goods, rebar sections, 2 drums of sealed diesel, more brackets, and the old welding mask I should have grabbed earlier. I found a stack of old army blankets too, wrapped tight in plastic. Threw those on the trailer without hesitation. I'm not going back again. Not unless something forces it. That building has been stripped of everything I know how to use. What's left isn't worth the risk anymore. There's always a moment after a place has been picked clean when it becomes dangerous to visit. Something might start nesting in it. Or someone. I tried fishing down by the lower stream 3 days later, took one of Marcus's rods and a small folding chair. Ice layer was thin enough near the rocks to break through without the auger. Dropped line, waited, patched a glove while I sat there. Felt dumb for the first hour, like the whole idea was wasteful, like I was pretending I was back in the old world. But then I got a bite. Small thing, barely longer than my hand, but it wriggled and fought. I cleaned it on the spot with a pocket knife, cooked it plain over a flat rock and dry twigs. Tasted like mud and bones, but it was food, and it reminded me I still knew how to do basic things that matter. The goats are holding up. One of them, the younger brown one with the chipped ear, started producing milk again once I gave her extra mash and stabilized the feeding pattern. I tried making cheese with old vinegar and a clean cloth, but ended up with something between glue and stale yogurt. Didn't bother finishing it. Milk's better fresh anyway. I only take what I need and leave the rest. I don't know how long they'll keep producing. No vet, no supplements, just instinct and luck now. The greenhouse is stable. Took me 5 days to finish the insulation, reseal the cracks, and install a new thermal venting system using black painted pipes along the interior south wall. It's not elegant, but it works. The compost pile behind the structure gives off enough heat to add a few degrees through the tubing at night. I planted backup rows of kale, mustard greens, and turnips. I don't expect fast growth in winter light, but anything helps. I eat raw leaves off the kale just to remind myself that something green still exists. First time I chewed one, I almost cried. Didn't taste good, just real. I started cleaning more than usual. Cabin floor, gear room, food crates. Not for hygiene, just for control. Something about keeping things in order makes me feel less blurred. I rebuilt 2 of the tool racks and retuned the shortwave, even though it still gives me nothing but static. One night I sat there and watched the dial sweep every band just to see if anything felt different. There's a click at 9.35 megahertz every time I rotate through. Just a click, not enough to decode. Maybe it's natural, maybe not. I logged it anyway. Now the hard part. I've got most of what I need. The cabin is finished. The greenhouse works. I have fuel for the generator if the batteries ever drop too far. But I'm still short on a few things I can't scavenge out here. Antibiotics, real painkillers, wire gauge testers, some advanced tools I didn't think I'd need when I started all this. And there's no more ignoring the fact that if I don't try for town eventually, I'll die out here when something breaks and I don't have the means to fix it. The road's about 9 miles west, maybe more depending on trail conditions. Beyond that is the highway, and beyond that, clear water. I don't expect it to be standing. I just need to see it. Not even for supplies. Just to know what's left. What kind of silence is down there? If there are vehicles on the shoulders, burned homes, barricades, bodies, or if it's just emptiness. I need to see it with my own eyes. I've tried not to think about it. Tried telling myself I can live like this for years. But I know how machines break. I know how teeth crack. I know what happens when a single cut gets infected and you don't have antiseptic. I've started planning. I won't go soon. It'll take a few days to prep properly. I need dry packs, a trail map marked again, and a second plan in case I'm forced to sleep in the bush. I'll need to reinforce the door while I'm away, trap the interior, set an alarm string that runs across the yard. I'll bring the rifle, side axe, bolt cutters, flare kit, maybe a fuel siphon if I come across any vehicles with tanks left intact. It's a gamble, but I've done worse with less. I'm not rushing, just moving toward the next step. I'm not going because I want to. I'm going because survival stops being passive once the easy jobs are done. You can't just build a wall and pretend you're fine. Not forever. It took me 4 days to finalize the pack, map a direct trail, and rehearse the route in sections. I know this region well, but I haven't walked some of those ridgelines in 2 years. With the trees bare and the streams half frozen, the landscape looks different. Sound carries further. There's no wind to cover your steps in the cold, and if anything is out there, it'll hear you before you ever know it's nearby. I kept the load minimal. 1 rifle, 24 rounds, compact hatchet, 2 full water bottles, 2 dry meals, fishing line, headlamp, 1 spare thermal layer, compass, paper map sealed in plastic. I left the quad behind. I don't want an engine giving my position away, or worse, stranding me when the snow deepens on the return. This would be on foot, there and back, 3 days, maybe 4 if I run into anything that slows me down. Before I left, I made the cabin as secure as possible, wired the greenhouse door shut, set a wire-triggered noise trap at both entry points and 1 backup in the old goat shed, left 2 emergency tins of grain in a high corner, just in case I don't make it back and someone else stumbles in here hungry. Not kindness, just practicality. No one lasts long on empty calories. I headed out just after first light. The sun broke low across the ridge as I crossed the perimeter fence and followed the south deer trail that bends into the creek valley. Snow was soft but shallow. My boots held traction without crampons. I stayed away from open ground, moved under tree cover whenever I could. No tracks, no smells, just that still, brittle silence that's taken over the world since the signals died. I moved slow for the first 2 hours. Every bend felt exposed. Every stump felt like a shape that might stand up and move. My ears stayed locked on the wind, but there was nothing. Just creaks in old wood and the scrape of my coat when I shifted wrong. I reached the halfway marker before noon, a split cedar log carved with old trail codes from back when forestry used this path for ATV runs. I sat there, chewed through half a pack of cold lentils, and drank water while keeping my rifle on my lap. About 2 miles from the road, the trees open up near a switchback slope that used to lead into an old gravel patch. That's where I found the first set of tracks. Not animal, human, barely visible, frozen into the upper crust of snow. Boots, not heavy, thin tread. I counted maybe 10 distinct steps, all staggered, uneven. Someone had been dragging one leg or walking hurt. No toe point, no skip in the line. Whatever made those tracks was either sick or not fully alive. I pulled back into cover, watched the tree line for a solid 10 minutes. Nothing moved. I followed the trail edge and skirted the slope to the west where a dry wash let me descend in silence. From there, I could see the highway. I crouched behind a stand of narrow birch trunks and scanned the asphalt with binoculars. What I saw didn't shock me, but it hit harder than expected. Cars, everywhere. Mostly shoulder-parked, some crashed. One overturned on the embankment like it had been clipped and rolled. Most of the hoods were open, doors ajar. Some stripped clean, maybe scavenged, maybe just abandoned in panic. Nothing moved. Not one crow, not one dog. I thought I'd see bones or rot, but there was very little visible. Snow had covered most of the smaller details, and time had faded the rest. Just silence, and empty steel shells lined up facing nowhere. I waited for nearly an hour before moving closer. When I stepped onto the road for the first time in weeks, I could hear the sound of my own breathing like it was someone else behind me. Asphalt was cracked, salt lines etched into it from a final pass of a plow that never came back. I checked a few vehicles, doors frozen shut or too damaged to open cleanly. Nothing worth keeping, no bodies. That made me nervous. Either they got out, or someone came through after and cleaned the scene. I found a delivery van with a cracked rear hatch and a logo for a grocery distributor out of Kamloops. Empty, except for a pair of torn gloves and a crumpled box with 2 sealed packs of dried fruit snacks. I took those, better than nothing. I also pulled a road flare from the glove box and pocketed it. Might be useful to distract or draw attention if needed. The walk into the first stretch of town was worse than I expected. I stuck to the edge of the highway, moved through the tree buffer, then passed behind a long chain of businesses with broken windows and collapsed signs. A gas station had been burned out. Pumps were torn open, hoses shredded. The convenience store was blackened with soot but structurally intact. I climbed through a side window and kept the rifle raised. Someone had been there. Not recently, but enough to leave signs. Cans scattered. Wrappers. A half-melted headlamp casing. Smelled like mold and burned plastic. I found a box of expired iodine packets and 3 rolls of gauze behind the counter. Worth it. I wrapped them in plastic and stuffed them into the bottom of my pack. Didn't linger. Didn't call out. In the alley between the store and the auto shop, I saw something that stopped me cold. A child's shoe, small and half covered in slush, resting next to a blood-streaked Parker sleeve. No body, no footprints. Just that. I didn't touch it. I didn't look closer. I moved on. I circled east toward a residential street I remembered from before. There were single-story homes, some still standing, a few with boarded windows, most with doors ajar. I didn't like the idea of staying in town longer than I had to, but daylight was running thin. I didn't want to get caught between collapsed buildings when visibility dropped, and the drain culvert I'd used the night before had filled with snowmelt. So I picked a small blue house with a half-fallen fence and slipped inside through the garage. The place had been abandoned quickly, shoes by the door, cupboards half emptied, couch cushions on the floor. There was no sign of anyone staying recently. The air was stale but dry, no rot, no heavy smell. Good enough. I checked every room, closed all curtains, set a small tripwire with a ratchet strap and metal screws across the hallway, left a few furniture legs wedged against the main door. It wouldn't stop anyone determined, but I'd hear them coming. I didn't unpack the pack, just set it near the rear exit and sat with my back to the wall, watching the front window through a narrow tear in the curtain. I stayed like that until it was fully dark. Then I slept. I woke up early, still cold, still tired, but alive. I took a look at my map, checked for any structures I'd missed near the industrial zone, and then scouted the last block to confirm what I came for. There wasn't much. Most of what I needed either wasn't here or had been stripped long before I got close. I found a wrecked pharmacy with a few melted candle stubs and a drawer of cotton pads. I took those, plus some blister-packed vitamins. Nothing special, but anything helps. I was standing at the edge of the front lawn, about to cross back into the alley, when I heard shouting. Not panicked, not the kind you hear when someone stubs a toe. This was hard, short, aggressive. 2 male voices. I dropped behind a wrecked sedan and scanned the street. They were maybe 50 feet down, half shadowed by a split cedar and an overhanging garage. Both men wore mismatched clothes, layers of shirts and jackets, nothing consistent. They had bags on their backs. One held a wooden bat with a rebar loop through the end. The other didn't carry a weapon, but he moved in fast bursts, shouting like he'd already made up his mind to hurt someone. They had a woman pinned against a gate. She was holding a kid, maybe 6 or 7. She didn't scream. She just held him tight and kept saying please, over and over. I watched for maybe 5 seconds. I didn't want to get involved. I told myself it wasn't my business. I didn't know them. I couldn't be sure what the real situation was. I could walk away. It wasn't my fight. Then the one with the bat raised it over his head. I stepped out. Rifle up, eye on the sights. I didn't say anything at first. Just made sure they saw me. The guy without the bat froze. The one holding it took a half step back but didn't drop it. I didn't give a speech. I didn't tell them to leave. I just said, loud enough to carry, walk away. The one without the bat ran, full sprint, turned down the corner and didn't look back. The other didn't move, just stared at me. I don't know what he thought I was going to do. Maybe he figured I wouldn't shoot. Maybe he figured he could rush me. I didn't wait to find out. I lowered the sights just enough and pulled the trigger. The round hit him in the thigh. He went down immediately, screaming, dropping the bat. The woman flinched, grabbed the kid, backed off 5 steps. Then, without hesitation, she picked up the bat and hit him across the face. Once, hard, then again. She didn't move after that, just held the kid close, crouched down behind a broken fence post. She didn't know who I was, didn't trust what I was. She was shaking, but not crying. Her mouth was tight. I approached slowly, keeping the rifle lowered but ready. She didn't run. The kid didn't speak, just stared at me. "Do you have somewhere to go?" I asked. She nodded once, then added, "We're not staying here. We were moving south." He followed us, Her voice was flat. No emotion, just words. I told her I wasn't going to hurt them, that I had no interest in whatever she was carrying, that I was just passing through. I gave her a sealed water packet from my belt and asked her name. Lena, she said. His name's Tyler. He's 7. She didn't ask for mine. I asked her what she'd seen in the city, how many were left, if there were any safe zones. She shook her head. People tried. First few weeks. They blocked the bridge, ran makeshift patrols. But it didn't last. Fights over supplies. Infection hit some of the camps. Others just vanished. Some turned on each other. Now, it's mostly people like them, or worse. I asked her how long she'd been walking. She said 2 weeks. Her group had been bigger. Some got sick. Others just disappeared. I didn't offer to take them with me. I wasn't ready for that. I couldn't feed 3. I couldn't even guarantee I'd make it back myself. But I told her which route I came in on, warned her where I'd seen signs of infected, gave her one of my spare flares. She tucked it into her coat without a word. She asked if I was alone. I nodded. She didn't look surprised. Then she took the kid's hand and started walking away. They didn't say goodbye. I waited until they turned the corner. Then I walked over to the one I shot. He was still breathing, barely. Face was shattered. His leg was bleeding through the snow. He tried to say something, but I didn't listen. I stripped the backpack off him. It was mostly empty, just a moldy protein bar, a rusted multi-tool, and some old receipts in the side pocket. No ID, no name. I left him there. I made it out of town that afternoon. Didn't stop, didn't eat. Got back to the tree line before sundown and walked until my calves locked up. I camped in a hollow beneath an overhang and didn't light a fire, just stared at the snow as it started falling. This world isn't fair, never was, but now it's worse. There's no justice out here, just people doing what they think they have to. Some break, some take, some stay quiet. I don't know where that woman and kid are now. I don't know if they made it another day. I'll never know. The hike home from town took longer than expected. My legs were slower. My thoughts were heavier. I retraced every part of the path twice before stepping back into familiar tree line. I checked the traps at the outer perimeter, looked over the greenhouse seals, ran a finger across the battery housing lid to see if anyone had tampered with it. Everything was exactly as I left it. Still, I watched the woods for 2 hours after I got inside, rifle resting across the windowsill. I didn't see movement, but that didn't mean I was alone. The snow came fast 2 days later. It wasn't a gentle build-up like the early flurries. This was the kind that shifts the whole terrain overnight. Trees turned into indistinct shapes, trails vanished, and sound deadened so badly I started losing track of distance even within my own yard. You can't hear a bootstep in powder that deep. That's what scared me. You can't hear a crawl either. On the 3rd night of the storm, power failed. The solar batteries had been running low already. Short daylight, heavy cloud cover, panels crusted with ice. The backup generator was buried, and I wasn't stupid enough to dig it out in the dark. So I stayed inside, wrapped the windows in blankets, burned one of the wax cans I'd found on the last supply run. No heat, just enough light to boil water and make a cup of weak broth. I tried to sleep, but something felt off. The kind of off you don't reason with. You just feel it in your skin, a pressure, a shift. The way silence presses on the cabin walls when something alive is nearby and trying not to be heard. I laid there with the rifle across my chest, trigger finger half curled, staring at the ceiling like it owed me answers. Then the wire alarm snapped. It wasn't loud, just a metallic ping from the far end of the north fence. But in the middle of a storm, even that much sound is wrong. I sat up, slid off the bed in silence, and moved to the back door. I didn't flick on the flashlight. I didn't open the window. I waited, back to the wall, rifle aimed at the angle where the back steps met the tree line. I counted my breaths. Nothing followed. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then something crunched. Soft, slow, Deliberate. Not a deer, not a goat. I aimed just above the height of an average man's shoulder and waited for another sound. I didn't fire, not then, but I did open the door just enough to speak through it. "If you're looking for warmth," I said, "this isn't the place." No answer, just wind. Then something moved fast, too fast for the depth of snow. I heard a thump near the greenhouse, a dragging motion. I aimed, fired once. The flash illuminated a shape, human height, skin exposed, moving on all fours. Not running, pacing. I couldn't tell if it was infected or something worse. I fired again. The shape vanished behind the shed. I didn't chase. I locked everything, reset the wire in case whatever it was came back. Then I sat up the rest of the night with the rifle ready, watching frost creep in through the window edges. When daylight came, I found the trail. It wasn't clean. Whatever moved through the snow had done it on knuckles and knees. The handprints were human. The gate wasn't. It had circled the goat pen, scratched at the greenhouse wall, then backed off once I fired. No blood, no sign of a clean hit. I followed the prints into the woods for 40 yards until they vanished into wind-swept snowdrift. I didn't go further. Something's changing. Maybe the cold makes them slower. Maybe it makes them smarter. I don't know. But this one wasn't moving like the rest. It wasn't groaning, staggering, or collapsing under its own rotted weight. It was deliberate. It scouted. That means whatever's inside them, if there's still anything left, it adapts. Or worse, remembers. After that night, I made changes. I moved the battery room inside the core structure, reinforced the windows with aluminum sheet, covered the interior greenhouse wall with thermal blankets, and shut it down until light returns in spring. I rationed the remaining diesel for 3 planned generator runs, each enough to bring the batteries back above minimum. I stored 2 extra days' worth of food under the floor hatch, just in case the main room gets breached. I haven't heard another alarm in 4 nights, but I haven't relaxed either. This cabin is strong, not perfect, but strong. I've got food, water, a fence, a rifle, 2 goats still alive, and the memory of what people do when the rules disappear. That's all I need right now. But winter's just begun. I don't expect rescue. I don't think the old world is waiting to reboot. I'm not clinging to hope. I'm clinging to structure. 1 day at a time. 1 repair at a time. 1 decision at a time. I don't know how long I'll survive. Maybe the infected return. Maybe others find my trail. Maybe the next intruder doesn't back off. But if I go down, it won't be because I failed to prepare. It'll be because I made 1 mistake too many in a world that doesn't forgive. Until then, I'll be here, in the cabin I built, above the Clearwater Basin, still breathing. And that's where we'll stop for now. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell me how the story hit you, what moments worked, what didn't, and what you'd want to hear next. You keep this project alive. Until next time, Survivor. Jack's Nightmares signing off.